I'm stable, oh yeah, no label, oh yeah, you know me. I have only a path, I'm lonely, but damn, I'm going to win, yeah.
All right, looks like we are live. What is up? What is up? Happy Wednesday. It is your host, Chris Celeste, your brother in success, and welcome to a look behind the curtain. Today we're on episode 18, and I'm really excited to share today's guest with you. If you guys have been following me for any length of time, you know that I'm, had a lot of trauma happen to me inside the military, and it really I allowed that. I'm going to take ownership and say that I allowed that to run my life for quite a long time. And it was when I personally decided to address that trauma and to start to recover from it that my life ultimately became better. And tonight's guest has a book on this very topic. She is also a veteran, and I cannot wait to dive into her story, share more of it with you guys, and just how she really did overcome some of her life and her struggles while she was in service as well. So very excited to share that with you. But as always, before we get into the awesome content here tonight and chat with our amazing guest, we got a little bit of housekeeping and our brand sponsor. So the housekeeping is, first off, using a bit of technology here tonight called StreamYard. It allows me to interact with you directly inside of the comments, inside of the live chat. So whether you're watching it here live or on replay, make sure you're engaging with the video inside the comments or inside the live chat if you're here live. I will be looking at it. I'll be pulling it up on screen. If you have any questions, we'll be answering them here live while we're on the call. So your engagement definitely adds to the interview, adds to the show. And so I just want to help, encourage that of you. So as you jump on, definitely comment what is your biggest takeaway. And if you're liking it, definitely smash that like button. And we're on YouTube as well. So if you're here new to the channel and you have not yet subscribed, make sure you hit that subscribe button and then turn that little notification bell to all so you don't miss any of our future content. We drop live episodes every Wednesday, and then we also drop value content throughout the week that's been pre-recorded. So tons of value for you, and every week you have something new to go check out. So make sure you smash that subscribe button. And then before we do dive into tonight's amazing content, we have to talk about our brand sponsor. It would not be possible to have this show without Operation Veteran Freedom, or as we call it, the OVF. And tonight I want to tell you about the DD214 Secrets, which is our flagship book that you can actually get a free copy of below. You can get a digital copy downloaded straight to your computer and dive right in. And inside that book, we go over the 5 core fundamental secrets that every service member needs to know as they're transitioning out of the military and taking on their new mission in the civilian world. And it's been proven to help thousands of people. And if you're interested in taking it into the world of entrepreneurship, there's even a little bit at the end that can show you how to get that started as well. So go ahead, smash the link below if you want a free copy and dive in today. So with all that being said, I'm really, really excited to talk about tonight's guest. I've been following her personally myself online for quite a while now. When she first launched her book and I started seeing posts about it, I know I got super excited because it's definitely in the realm of what I love to bring to the world and what I've personally gone through as myself. But not only is she an author, which is a more recent development for her, even though she's been practicing at it behind the scenes for a long time. And we'll get into all that here in a little bit. But she's also an educator. She works with nonprofits. She's a mother. She's a wife. Her husband's also a service member. And so I'm really excited to really dive into our guest here tonight's story and really get to know her some more. So do me a huge favor and help me welcome to the call Miss Jennifer Hobbs so she can share with us her story and her book. What's up?
My weight. Oh, burn. That's the joke I need to not keep giving. Thanks for having me on here, Chris. Whether my weight is high or not, I appreciate being on here so much. And I just love that your mission is like really focused. It's focused, a huge umbrella, but really focused on helping veterans with that transition. Because I feel like that's a piece that was really missing 20 years ago when I transitioned out. So thanks for having me here. Thanks so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Very excited to have you on. I'll be really just straightforward. It's kind of awesome to have some female energy on the call. It's usually a bunch of guys. And so to hear your perspective, to hear kind of your take on life, the military and service, I'm really excited to dive into it. But before we do dive into all that, I like to let the audience know just a little bit about who you are and your backstory. So just give us a quick 2 to 5 minutes. Who are you? Where do you come from? What did you want to be when you grew up? Kind of thing.
Okay. Well, I moved around a lot as a kid, born in Boise, Idaho. And because I moved around a lot, people always ask me, like, were you a military brat? No, I wasn't. However, a lot of my family was in the military. And so over the years, that was something that I admired. My mother was in the reserves. My brother is a Marine. I had to learn not to say was a Marine, is a Marine. And my father was in the Navy. I think I sometimes get Coast Guard and Navy mixed up, but just so much of my family was in it. And so I admired that very much. And then as we went through life together, and my mom was mostly a single mom for most years, my brother, Scott, my mom, and I, we were just really a family unit, living and doing life together, struggling and laughing and crying together. And I think through all those hard times and struggles, it really helped to make me who I am. I don't think it did. It definitely did. Me and my brother both, attest to that. But all those struggles as children, although we would look around at, people around us and see like the privileges they would have and be jealous of it at the time. Now we're just so thankful that we did have those challenges and we were raised like that because now, we persevere with resilience. So then as I got older and I got into high school, still with my mom as a single mom, although she did marry and then things transition. Before I go into that, squirrel over there, I won't. But it was through more hardship that things were just kind of crumbling in my life, like around 15, 16 years old. But I still had this idea of I really liked the way that my brother's uniform felt when I put it on, because I totally talked him into letting me. Actually, I talk about this in my book. I I talked him into letting me wear it one Halloween. That's horrible, right? I wore it for Halloween, his Marine uniform. I didn't really go trick or treating. I just felt badass putting it
Mm.
on, excuse me. And so it was then that I was like, oh, absolutely. Like this is the uniform I need to be in. So like that was just kind of the icing on the cake where I already knew I was going to do it. And then I was ready to sign before 17. And at 17 years old, you can sign on that line. And so my recruiter was, wait, you probably camped outside of my house on my 17th birthday, ready for me to sign the next day. And I did. And I was a junior and so in the National Guard, I was in the National Guard, the Army National Guard as an 88 Micah truck driver. And in the National Guard, you can do a split option where you go to basic training during the summer before your senior year. And then you go back to your senior year, you go for 1 week in a month, that 1 week in a month. And then you come back and you go to AIT for the following summer. And then from there on out, it is supposed to be 1 week in a month, 2 weeks during the summer. That's what, some people that still aren't educated on that think it is, but it actually is not. It's more like the International Guard. We should call it the International Guard. But so I went to AIT the summer after my senior year and I started college. I just stuck with the plan that I had always had of I want to be a teacher. I want to be a teacher. And I started school. I did a semester, and then my second semester they mobilized us. I withdrew. Again, all this hot mess is in my book, but I withdrew, and then we got mobilized for 5 days to pack everything up. We did not go, and then I was sent home, like to pick up the pieces and wait. They said, "Oh well, we don't need you right now. You guys are on high alert." And it wasn't like 9 more months until we got mobilized again in December of 2003. And I was 19 years old. And so I had a 15-month deployment. We went to Iraq, right outside of Baghdad, right between Baghdad and Abu Ghraib. And it was a 15-month deployment. And I turned 20 and 21 on the deployment. So I was pretty young. It was being a transportation unit, we hauled mail. We were the gun. Actually, I'm sorry, we didn't haul the mail. We were gun security for the mail carriers. So civilian drivers would load up their trucks with all the mail, and we were loaded with firepower to space out in between them and take them through all these different bases in Iraq. And so that's what, made it a challenging year, a very difficult year in 2004. Lots of roadside bombs on the base that we were at, tons of mortars, like over 200 and some rounds that came in that year. And, I have even said before, that we got pretty lucky from their bad aim, even though we lost. And that's a strong statement, but I hope people understand when I say we lost 5 people, 3 to IED, or I'm sorry, 3 to mortars and 2 to roadside bombs. And all that, it does seem like a lot, and it is a lot. It's a lot, for any unit, and it's a lot for a National Guard unit. But if you look at how many attacks we had, like, they didn't have the best of aim. So we got lucky 200 and how many times, And so as we returned with our unit, I thought I would jump right back into school because that was the plan, right? Gotta go back to school, gotta go back. I didn't give myself any downtime because I didn't need it, right? I didn't need it. I had to go to school. I had to take care of these veteran grants. And from there, that's where things continued to change, and you come back a different person. The minute you get deployed, things really just kind of turn them, regardless of what age you are. And when I say turn, you start to grow as a person, and whether that's in a sometimes a bad way, I guess I can't even say bad, but a volatile way, or a positive way, that's just what happens. And so as I returned, the struggles, they continued. I actually met my husband on that deployment. He was also with our unit, the 1544th Transportation Unit out of Paris, Illinois. I started running my game on him at the beginning of the deployment, Chris. I know that's not combat skills, that's pretty 19 years old of me, but we formed a friendship and had one another, and our unit. I mean, everyone grew so close that year, but throughout the year, we grew and we had one another to an extent, right? We're in completely different barracks, and then he was hit by a roadside bomb the night that my battle buddy, Jessica Covey, also got hit in the same truck with him. She was the 5th person to pass away in our unit. And everyone thought for sure that he was the one that was KIA. And he wasn't. And actually, he survived, even though the truck flipped and landed on his face and knocked out all his teeth and crushed everything. So you can only imagine that definitely shook up the entire unit.
Yeah.
But shook up myself as well, and him. I mean, I can't even imagine. Here I speak on it, but those shame gremlins are who are you to speak of Ryan getting blown up? But I was there as well, and as we returned from Iraq, it was hard. It was messy. And we were on again. We were off again, on again, off again. I won't go too much into detail about that because that's some of the stuff that I talk about, in the book, just taking trauma and not being able to deal with it appropriately, and then growing through it. Fortunately, I know some people don't exactly do that, but fortunately, I have been able to find that.
Wow.
So then I wrote a book.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm extremely happy that you did, because you have a very inspiring story, even though not all of it has its great moments. There's a lot of inspiration that comes from that. You have an amazing relationship with your husband now because of that. I'm sure that tight bond that you and your unit created over that year has become lifelong friends that you now still are with to this day. And so a lot of great things do come from the darker times in our lives. And so I'm really happy to hear that even though you did lose somebody and things weren't always so great, there was so much greatness that did happen. And I think that you and I are of the same mindset, where there's post-traumatic growth that comes from all of these situations. And so thank you so much for being open and honest and sharing that. There's so much in there that other people would have been so guarded with. And it's so great when you can be open, honest, and vulnerable for others to really experience that. I feel like that helps others to do the same. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
So you went through this traumatic experience. You lost 5 amazing people from your unit. You wrote the book. What kind of healing process was that for you? What did it allow you to release some of that energy? Like, what was it that did it benefit you in any way writing the book?
Yes, it definitely did. This was something that this work in progress now, the book Calmed Growth After Trauma, it was a work in progress, and it started more as, although, I hoped to write a book, 18 years ago, well, 17 when we returned. I hoped that one day I would write a book. As I sat down and I started to journal, just more as a coping mechanism. I don't think I seen it as a coping mechanism as at the time. I seen it as, I'm gonna write a book someday.
Mhm.
And looking back on it 18 years ago, I realized like that was a fun thought, Jennifer, but like it was inspirational, but it was more of a coping mechanism. And really the pages of my work in progress really only seen my efforts in those hard, dark, struggling times. It wasn't like when things are going really good that suddenly I sat down and I started writing. No,
Mhm.
it was in the darkest times that I sat down and wrote. So um 2 years, so that was 17 years ago when I started it more as a coping mechanism. And then 2 years ago I fainted, woke up in the ICU, had cracked my skull in a couple places, and through that very tiring, painful journey of recovery and trying to figure out how in the world, piece all these pieces together. Once again, I found myself in this dark place that I hadn't been in 17 years, 16 years. And fortunately, I've grown through those struggles over those years to identify that. And I think that's where I can answer your question, Chris. Like through all the years, like what has helped me is to, I feel like one of the first steps of being able to grow is just to reflect and own it, whether it's the good, the bad, the ugly, what you got to work on, what you're good at. You got to own that. And so when I was able to own that in those dark times and be like, I'm a mess. I need to get it together. Like I need to set some goals. I should get back to writing. And I did. And then as I started to write, as I really just got in the headspace, but really, what also helped is connecting with people who were vulnerable to be honest and open about life,
Mhm.
like about struggles and things of that, not just veterans, but like just owning that and giving it its space and identifying that our past does not define our future.
Yeah.
And it was so that helped me as I was writing the book. I was scared, I was full-time teaching. I have been for this is my 13th year, and I can't even say it's my 13th year full-time teaching because I just now took on a virtual part-time teaching job because I had resigned a year ago. But let me back up. So in the 12th year of teaching, that's when I was writing this book, and I was scared. I was scared. I was like, oh my gosh, like my students' parents are going to read this. My colleagues are going to read this. My boss, my administrators, my superintendent, they're all going to read it. My students might read it.
Yeah.
And that was super scary. And I think that also made me be a wimp and well, and when I say a wimp, I mean it made me procrastinate.
Yeah.
It made me procrastinate, made me put all that fear in me. And I got it done, but I feel, I always I give myself the grace now, but at the time I was like, gosh, like pick up the pace, like stop making excuses to not write. So it was the fear that kept me from putting those words down on paper, but overcoming that fear was like um, a huge step in the process of growth. But another thing that I felt like was so healing, in addition to finding my own strength to overcome the fear, would be having those conversations with my husband. So, like I said, we were in the same unit, but we were also in the same platoon. So in a unit of 160 people, our platoon had about 30. We were in the same platoon. And so we have similar experiences. And as I went to go write my book, and I took on an amazing book coach to help me take all this that I had and help me with my executive functioning skills to put that down on paper. I know that might sound like a bunch of mumble jumble to some people, but basically I had all the building blocks and I didn't know how to build. And she was like, you know what would be really amazing? Like if you made it a dual memoir, because your perspective of this instance looks like this, but your husband's looks like this. And that was like, that's how it was for this entire year, right? Like all these different things that happened, we were in different places. And I went with that. I knew that was a fabulous idea. And so my book, Calmed Growth After Trauma, is a dual memoir where some of the chapters I told from my perspective and some of them I told in my husband's perspective, which is really challenging because he's a very funny, sarcastic, fly by the seat of his pants type guy. But I through those conversations with him. So what I was saying was we were on that deployment together. And so I know a lot. I know a lot about what happened in the years that followed, even with our on and off being together, not together. I know a lot of everything. But through that year of writing, I learned so much more, just 18 years later, asking more questions. At the right time, right? Like knowing that it's the right time to ask these questions, press a little harder. I could tell from our conversations that it was healing for him, that it was like, wow, this is how I felt. It seemed to me from the way that he was just responding that it was like, wow, like people actually care about this. People actually care about what I have to say, because here he just sees, people coming home and dealing with all this stuff and maybe getting 100% rating, maybe not. And over here, he's still on med hold. And so like, I think that really messed with him.
Yeah.
And, resentment, bitterness. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but like we all go through a different journey. And so 18 years later, as I'm sitting there asking him all these questions, you could tell it was a relief to get off his chest and feel like, wow, like people want to hear this. My story is actually important. And so I could tell that it was a healing process for him. And not to mention, like I learned even more and I was just dying laughing. He is a riot. I heard stories I hadn't even heard before, which I totally included in my book, but he's the random person that will like, just one of the stories in this book, I hope it's okay to get off on a tangent. He's at basic training and he gets to go on, actually, it's the break between basic training and AIT. And he gets to go on that little leave and he comes back and there's like nobody there. And this guy walks up to him and is like, yeah, they're actually letting your parents sign you out for a couple more days. And he's like, my dad just left. Like, what? And so he goes up to his battle buddy, his Hispanic battle buddy, and he like goes over his plan with his battle buddy, like, hey, can I borrow your pops? Like, and his dad doesn't speak a lick of English, and Ryan just rolls up and puts his arm around him and like goes to sign out. And he's like, hey dad, like we're gonna have so much fun. And the guy's like, see, and he like signs him out and he got to stay out a little bit longer. That's the kind of crazy stuff whereas like I'm a weenie, like I was hard to like break the rules sometimes, but he didn't have any shame in it at all.
That's awesome. I love those little stories that you when you know somebody long enough, they finally share them with you. And it's those little moments that are like, that's really awesome that you shared that.
Yes.
There's two things that you touched on in that last part that I think are really powerful, and I kind of want to go back and touch on them. One And I shared this in a YouTube video that I dropped like a week ago, where I shared about how the 3 things I personally use to be much better with my trauma today than I ever was in my whole life. And one of them was communication, like actually being able to share myself open and honestly with someone who actually understood me, not just sharing it with a therapist who's never been through trauma, or a friend who wants to be there to help me but has never experienced that before, but actually getting around other people who know what it's like to experience loss, to see horror, to like really be in it, and then be able to share with them, because that communication, that perspective for me was super healing. And it sounds, based on what you were just saying, that there was a lot of release there for your husband and you too, as you were able to finally kind of share these stories. So is that fair to say?
Most definitely. And I think with that expression and that communication comes sometimes a little bit of like self-reflection too. And so I would absolutely agree.
The second thing that you brought up that I thought was really interesting that you had mentioned it was that, you had this internal calling to write the book, but you procrastinated. And it was fear-based, what are people going to think, what people are going to say. And I think that that is probably the number one thing that myself, my business partner, Liam, we deal with our veteran students is they have this drive. They definitely have the capability of doing these amazing things. I mean, just from the characteristics that were driven into them in basic training, they already have a leg above most people if they were to tap into that. But what we find is that they let fear stop them. And it's mainly the fear of, what is my aunt going to think? Or what is, Joe Smo down the road going to think? And it's a weird fear. How did you overcome that?
Holy cow, that's a good question. I mean, honestly, I guess I would say like having a support system, but like with even if you don't have a support system, like you communicate with the ones that love you and then build that support system. But I guess I wouldn't even say that it would be the people closest to me that was my support. People are like, oh yeah, you're gonna read a book.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and it was having a support system of people with like minds.
Yeah.
So and even if it's not, I mean, it doesn't have to be support like, oh, we're gonna do this training every week like this. It's just like people you can be vulnerable with, people you can confide in, people you can be a hot mess with, you can cry to, you can, lay out why you're disappointed in yourself, like that you're upset that you are procrastinating, and they won't sit there and be like, well, just give yourself some grace, or they might at times they'll give you what you need because they're like-minded like you, they know you, and they've also probably been through it as well.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I had a mentor, I'm a very much of the same kind of like mind with these things, is that, I had a mentor tell me, shoot, just lost my train of thought. What was I just saying?
We were talking about like minds and support, and how people won't exactly always tell you like to give you grace, but like be honest with you because
Yes,
they've
thank you
been
so
there
much.
before.
Trains back on the tracks. I appreciate that. I had a mentor who told me that you want to surround yourself with the kind of people who love you enough that they'll hold you accountable to what you ask and say you want. You want the kind of people in your life that if you tell them, I'm going to get up and run every morning at 5 a.m., that if you're laying in bed at 5:01, you hear a knock on the door and they're standing there with your running shoes saying, no, you said you wanted this. Let's go. Right. The kind of
Mm,
people who love you enough and to actually make you uncomfortable to go after the things you want, and not just be the yes man in your life who enables you to keep staying on that path of mediocrity. And I think that
mhm.
that is such a powerful thing to bring into one's life. Is it's nice to feel comfort and have people who love you, but it's another level when that they love you enough to say, no, you said you wanted this, let's go. Right. And
Oh
actually
yeah,
help you hold yourself accountable when maybe you don't have the willpower to do it for yourself that day.
absolutely. And I'm so grateful on that note that I have friends like that,
Yeah.
you know, and they happen to, I have other friends from my childhood, but like the battle buddies I keep in touch with, that is how they are. They keep me accountable and they're honest with me and I'm honest with them.
Well, we're getting to the top of our 30 minutes together. And, before I thank you so much and let everybody know where they can go get your book, I kind of want to ask you one question, author to author. I kind of always want to know this about other authors as well. What was your biggest takeaway from finally publishing your work?
I would say my biggest takeaway is that we are so much stronger than our fear, than what your mind produces, those kind of thoughts, whether they come from society or the self lies that you have shaped in your head from things you've been through in the past. But really overcoming that fear and being honest and vulnerable, like that was the biggest takeaway for me. And it helps me now just to continue on this path, after I resigned from teaching and I'm doing it part time right now, but I really want to dedicate my time to helping veterans and their families. And I've been finding different outlets to do that. And that fear tries to creep in, like, can you do this? Do you want that pension? Maybe you should go back to that pension. And I'm like, no, like I want joy. I want fulfillment. I want to do what my heart calls me to do. And so definitely overcoming the fear, biggest takeaway.
Awesome. Jennifer, thank you so much for jumping on, sharing yourself so open and honestly. The vulnerability here tonight, I'm sure that the audience definitely felt that. And I believe, and I'm sure, you can agree, disagree, that's a huge part of recovery and growth past trauma, is being able to go into that place and own that. And so thank you for being an amazing example of what that looks like. Anybody who wants to grab your book, dive in deeper, get to know you, follow you on social media, how do they get a hold of you? How do they get your book?
You should stalk me. No, you can. I have thejenniferhobbs.com is my website, but yeah, you can pretty much find me on any social media platform except Twitter. I'm not on Twitter, so Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn as author Jennifer Hobbs, and my book is on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, and things of that sort. But if you want a fancy autographed copy, you can email me at jennifer@thejenniferhobbs.com. Sign up for my newsletter so you can continue to follow the other things I got going on, like my podcast, Celebrate the Struggle, and my next book that's going to be coming out. But Chris, thanks so much for having me. It's an honor to be on your show and be a part of other people's mission to be a voice and help other people. So I feel so rad right now. Like there should be a red carpet walking out of my office right now for me to throw flowers out to my kids and husband, but probably won't be, but in my head there will be. Thanks for having me on here.
Yeah, I appreciate the kind words. It was my honor to have you. And for everybody else out there, thank you so much for being here. Again, if you're brand new to the show, brand new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the future content. If you want to get notified to make sure that you don't, make sure you hit the little bell and mark it to all so you get notified as we drop weekly content, live interviews every Wednesday, as well as value drops throughout the week. And thank you guys so much for being here. That's a wrap for episode 18. And drop your biggest takeaway in the comment for me so that we know what you pulled away from this episode. But other than that, have a fantastic night. Peace.